Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be getting this thing tuned, and hopefully we can get it all set up so we can just run it and finally drive this thing. We got a little bit of a base tune on it, but we're hoping to hit 27-ish, 28 PSI on this thing tonight. So hopefully we can get that done before it rains. It's supposed to rain a lot today, just like every other day it seems. So let's just get a cold start for you guys. There she is, boys. Now let's go get some tuning done. So as you guys can see, it's not the best weather out today, but it's gonna be like this for about another week. And it was like this last night too, but the roads are pretty dry right now. We got a little bit of a sprinkle going on, but we're able to do some wide open throttle pulls still. So that's not really a problem. At least not yet anyways. We'll see if we get a pretty big downpour here, but yeah, it's like pretty well dialed for where we're at right now on the tune. It's really hard for the camera to pick up, but we're cruising pretty close to 14.7. So we're stoic just about all the time cruising, which is awesome. I just sent him the 20 PSI log, so once we get that back, we'll make some more adjustments and go from there. So we had to call it on the tuning, not only because of the weather, but because it's not responding to adding fuel. We're trying to get some more fuel in it and riching it up, but it's not doing it. And I've 1650cc injectors and a 340 air motive fuel pump, so we have enough fuel. We're only at like 25 PSI right now, but we're still not able to get the fuel we need, so we got to run through some fuel checks. I'm gonna check the fuel pressure regulator. It is brand new, but we're gonna check that. I'm gonna change the filter first and foremost because I have yet to change the fuel filter on this thing. We are gonna be upgrading the fuel filter eventually, but for now we're just gonna throw a stock filter in it. But we'll be putting a probably stainless fuel filter in there and get rid of that banjo bolt on the factory fuel filter housing and just go straight to -6 fuel line all the way to the fuel rail. So we'll look into that, but for now we're kind of on hold until we get that figured out. We're gonna start on the fuel filter, get that changed out. I picked one up from the parts store, so we're gonna do the fuel filter, and then after we do that, we're just gonna do some checks on our fuel pressure regulator. We're gonna put some Teflon on this set screw because I think it's leaking just a little bit, but we're going to be checking to see if it's operating properly, doing its job, if it's bad or if it's good. And we're also going to be resetting our base fuel pressure. So that's where we're at today, so let's get started.
Real men battle the elements.
When it starts raining, you need to improvise. Improvise, overcome, and adapt. Is that what it is? Improvise, adapt, overcome? What's the saying? Yeah, this is working out great. And we're back. So we changed out the fuel filter, and while doing so, the bottom fuel line, like the hard line going to the bottom of the fuel filter, was actually kinked a little bit. So we tried fixing that with another hard line, and that we spent hours trying to do that, and that was an absolute nightmare. So we went to a AN line, put an AN line in there. We ran it down to the hard line on the side. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see that. There's just a little loop in there right now. We made it long just in case we needed to trim some more, but it's okay for now. Again, this is all temporary. We're gonna be running dash 8 all the way to the back of the tank, but we used compression fittings to attach the hard line to the AN line, and that bumped our fuel pressure up. So we're now sitting at like 46 psi, 47 psi, where before it was at the 43, which is actually where it's supposed to be sitting. So that kink and the filter brought our fuel pressure up quite a bit, and the filter wasn't clogged. It was pretty clean. It must have been replaced at some point because it was actually pretty good. But now we're going to be replacing this banjo bolt because that's a pretty big restriction. So we're replacing that banjo bolt with this guy. This is an M12 by 1.25 2-8. So this is going to be going to the fuel rail, which we have here, the Mitsubishi flange to the -8 here as well. So we're just going to run a line from there to our fuel rail, and that should eliminate that banjo bolt right there, which is a pretty big restriction, and hopefully that solves our fueling issue. We did have a little bit of a leak on top of our fuel pressure regulator. I fixed that. I just tightened down this nut like a bunch. There's still a very minor leak at the set screw, so maybe I'll put some Teflon tape on there. But otherwise, I think we're pretty good with what we have here right now. So we're gonna do this line and see if that works. Just real quick, I just wanted to show you the new line versus the old line. So obviously we've got a very small inlet here, and then on the other side we have that banjo, which is even smaller, and then it has to not only go through that tiny little hole, but go through the hole through the bolt and then find its way to the inlet. So with this is -8. I can't really see in there, but I mean, obviously just the diameter is significantly larger, so this should eliminate a lot of the flow issues we're having, and hopefully this is our culprit as to why we aren't able to get a little more fuel up top on wide open throttle pulls. So we'll throw this guy in and see what happens. Finished up that line. It was really easy to install. So like I said, we've got that -8 fitting on the fuel rail there, and then goes down to this 45 and to a 90 right off of that M12 by 1.25 fitting into the factory fuel filter. I do have another fuel filter on the way, so we will be replacing that. But for now, I think this is gonna work. And if you look here, I gotta remount this gauge, make it straight, but hard to see, but we're almost at like 50 psi now. So again, we just keep bumping up our fuel pressure with all of these little fixes that we're doing. So it's looking like we're getting more fuel pressure, and that we are seeing some restrictions. So that's really good to see, because that means we are improving our fuel system. So that's really awesome. Okay guys, I just wanted to show you what I'm doing here. We're still having fuel pressure issues. At least we're having fuel issues. So I want to verify during the log that we're seeing adequate fuel pressure. So we're going to be installing a fuel pressure sensor just on the feed side of the regulator. So we've got this guy, and then we have this little fitting right here, and this allows for a 1/8 NPT, which we're going to be threading that into. And again, this is just going to go right here, and so right off our rail, and then it's going to go right to this guy. So we're going to see what our rail pressure is, and we're going to be able to log it in ECM Link. So let me get tackling this, and then we'll see if we get some good values. So we just got that fitting installed, and the FedEx guy showed up, and I'll show you what's inside of this thing. So this is what just showed up. As you can see here, we've got the TI Automotive fuel pump, and if any of you guys know what that number is, this is a 525 LPH Hellcat fuel pump made by Walbro. So we've got this guy, and we've got the install kit as well. I got this from Quantum Fuel Systems, and I know we're going to be checking our fuel pressure But I mean, I need to upgrade the pump anyways. I want to run E85, and with this guy on E85, we're probably going to run out of pump. So we just went to the 525. We're going to bolt that in. Pretty easy install. I am waiting on that fuel seal from Toyota, and I'll show you guys that when we go install it. But this is kind of just while I'm in there, might as well get a new pump while we can. So that's pretty awesome that showed up. We've got this fitting all buttoned up, and just to show you again, it's a -6 fitting and a 1/8 NPT, and then to a male, so we can attach just our straight hose on there. This is like really bad, but this actually wasn't me. This must have been the shop that because my fuel pressure regulator went bad last time I went to go tune it, so they had to put a new one in, and they really fucked it up. I don't care, it doesn't matter to me, but just, yeah, it's pretty gross. So now we've got to wire in this guy, and so we have 3 wires. One of them is, the red one's power, the black one's ground, and the green one's gonna be your input. So for me, what I'm gonna do, a lot of guys do the input from their MDP, but since mine's my map sensor, I'm not gonna use the input off of here. So instead, I'm gonna use the input off of my mass airflow sensor and use the baro signal. So then we can go into ECM link and switch that baro signal into our fuel pressure. So we're gonna switch that, and I'll show you what I mean when I say that. But this guy's gonna be 5-volt reference, so we're gonna tie that into our mass airflow sensor as well. I already have that thing cut open for my IAT, so we're just gonna do another guy in there, and then this guy is gonna go to ground. So I'll finish this up and we'll see if we can get this thing in the computer. So here's my opened mass airflow sensor wiring, since I already have my ethanol content sensor and my intake air temperature sensor plugged in. We do have some wires used up already, but these are the 2 I'm going to be using. So we've got the green and yellow. This is going to be our 5-volt reference, and then we've got the orange, which is our barometric pressure. So we're going to use this as our signal input, so we can log it in ECM link. Since I'm not using this anymore, this is going to be what we're using for our fuel pressure input to the ECU. Alright, we're all hooked up. I just kind of left the wires bare for now, just to see if to validate it essentially. I'm really gonna fix this gauge, make it straight, but we're at like 38, kind of 39 at idle. No leaks either, which is good. And then on the log here, hold on, I stopped the stream. Let's go start stream. Yeah, we're at 38 and change, 39 almost. So I'll show you what I did. We went to ECU inputs, and then since I'm on the baro for the pin, that's the input I used for the sensor. I went and selected linear fuel pressure, and then we saved the pin assignment, and then you have to go into captured values, this guy right here, and you're going to select linear fuel pressure, this guy right here, and you're going to add it to your captured values, and then you go into your live data log, and you'll have to right click and go to displayed values and scroll down and find it, and then add it to the display, and then it'll come up. So I have it added now, obviously, and then we have to go into fuel pressure settings, and you're going to adjust these according to the specs on your sensor. This is just an eBay or an Amazon sensor, and obviously it's not a good enough sensor because 1.75 just isn't enough. We need that to be higher. So, but this is what is working, I guess, the best, you could say. I had to play with it for a little bit to figure out what works, because Amazon sensors are pretty cheap and pretty shitty. So I'm gonna have to buy a good sensor eventually here and get that installed. But yeah, for now this is what we're working with, and I guess we'll go for a drive and see if the sensor's even able to pick up or accurately display some of the information. That's kind of really what it's going to come down to. So yeah, I'll button this up, get everything wrapped up, and go for a drive. Well, after a little bit of driving, I didn't really like the numbers I was getting on my fuel pressure sensor, and I think that's just due to the 5-volt source I was using. So like I said, I had the 5-volt source. I had everything through the mass airflow sensor wiring. So I had 5-volt source, the reference, and then I had your signal, and then also I had the ground. So I think the ground and the input for the sensor are going to be okay. I'm still using the baro, but I read on DSM tuners a guy had this did the same thing I did, and the 5-volt source was no good from the MAF, so we switched it over to the MDP sensor, and it was good. So I'm going to try that and see if it's a little better. So hopefully that kind of fixes the issue, because the numbers that I was using for scaling on DSM Link just really didn't work, and I'm hoping this is going to fix that. Okay, so now I'm tied into the NDP for my 5-volt, and it seems a little better. I did have another sensor kicking around too, so that probably had a lot to do with it. I just slapped it in, but it is a higher pressure sensor. So I'll show you here what I mean. So we're at 43 PSI, which is right where we want to be, and I'll show you my parameters. So this one's a 250 PSI sensor. It's a big girl. I just had it laying around. I think it's from Amazon too. And now we can do 5 volts and 0.5 volts. So let's go verify our gauge. See if we're at 43. And our gauge is reading, gosh, it's so hard to see. 42, so it's a little low, so I guess I could adjust that up a little bit, because we should be seeing a little bit more, but it's pretty close. 1 PSI difference. I'm not worried about that. So I'm just gonna go for a quick little burn. Got the laptop here. We're gonna log it and see if this pressure sensor is reading properly, or to validate just our fuel pressure in general if it is reading properly. So we'll go do that real quick and swing back and check out the log. Okay, so here's the log. We'll start over kind of at the start here, and on the left there we got RPM, and then right here we've got our fuel pressure, and then over here we've got our boost. So right here it's looking pretty good. I get to full throttle right here, or 100%. That's this green line here, and once we get, everything's looking pretty good, because you want to add 43, like our base fuel pressure, which is about 43 plus the boost, right? So it's like a little low here, but that's not too bad. And once we get up to, it gets up to like 60 right here, which is great. But once we get up to 66,000 RPM-ish, 63, I guess, 64, it starts to drop, like it doesn't go any higher, and it just tapers. So right here we're at 7,500 RPM, or sorry, 7,200 RPM. We're at almost 25 pounds of boost, and we're only at 58. So we definitely have a fuel pressure problem. And I checked the regulator. The regulator does, like I turned the fuel pump on, put the set screw in all the way in, and we shot up all the way to 80. So for some reason there is a pump problem, likely, or it's our rise problem, like the one-to-one rise. I do need to verify that as well, but we can verify that. I am throwing that new pump in, so maybe it's just that O-ring that seals in the top of the sending unit. So that could be our problem, but either way, we're getting a new fuel pump, so we're gonna essentially alleviate every issue that the pump could be. So if it wasn't getting, if the pump was dying, if it wasn't sealing, whatever, we're throwing a new pump in, so that's eliminating that. So we're gonna try that, and I will do the test on the 1-to-1 rise. I do have it teed in to my boost gauge, so maybe I could just put it straight to the manifold and kick the boost gauge out and give that a shot, see if maybe, I don't know, I did a boost leak test and didn't see a leak, but maybe there's a leak somewhere along that line. I don't know, maybe up here down into the engine base somewhere. It's causing a little bit of an issue, but yeah, we're not getting enough fuel pressure. So that's gonna be it for this video, guys. We did a lot of troubleshooting and a lot of, I guess, little fixes on the car, but on the next one we are going to be installing that Walbro 525, so we'll get that installed, and I really hope that fixes our fueling issue. If not, I mean, we're probably just gonna end up having to do that -8 feed and a -6 return line, and that is still part of the plan. But I mean, if this fuel pump works out of the gate, then we'll probably run it like that for a little while. But I mean, I guess we won't know till we find out. So that's gonna be it for this video, and we'll see you on the next one.